Tonight on News 5 Live, no payment on the last Friday of the month for teachers. Government will disburse monthly wages on April 29th. There is a mixed reaction from the teachers. Cabinet decides to officially halt the informal exportation of cattle to Guatemala. Cattle farmers say the decision cripples the industry. A total of 5 persons have recovered from the coronavirus. The PM eases some state of emergency restrictions, local public transportation for essential workers and essential purposes to resume, and some businesses to reopen for limited hours. The Chiquibul and Vaca forests are burning out of control. FCD Executive Director says that the situation is dire and controlling the wildfire seems impossible. And 3 Dangrega residents are arraigned for being in possession of unprocessed, out-of-season conch. But were they hired by a foreign entity to supply? Details of these stories and more coming up in tonight's newscast.
With over 100 years of service excellence in Belize, the Belize
Good evening. Welcome to News 5 Live for Thursday, April 23rd. I am Marlene Cuellar. April 24th is the last Friday of the month, and across the country, several thousand teachers were expecting that their salaries would have been deposited in their accounts going into the weekend. But like other public officers, they too will have to wait until next Wednesday to collect their pay. It's only a difference of a few days. However, with the COVID-19 crisis at hand, coupled with the fact that teachers were paid early last month, their pockets are stretched thin. PM Barrow late last week sounded the alarm that the country is short of money. This morning, the Ministry of Education sent out a memo informing the Belize National Teachers Union of the delay in payment. The written communication was received with mixed feelings, as there are those on BNTU's Council of Management who are simply grateful for still being able to receive their salaries in full, while there are others who are already feeling the severe financial pinch at home. Going forward, there is a growing uncertainty among teachers that salaries will be cut amid the economic meltdown. This afternoon, News 5 spoke with National President of the BNTU, Senator Elena Smith.
I didn't expect that we would have seen such a memo. We know that things are not too well right now with the situation that we are going through, but we felt that at least for this month, that teachers would have been paid on time, especially noting that we have had our last salary since March. We don't get paid twice per month as public officers. We get paid once a month, and so our last salary was in March 20th, so it would have been about 6 weeks since we've had a salary. So that was the initial reaction that I had. Our council was informed, yes, and they have been reaching out to their members to get some feedback. But as you know, we got a message this morning. And so from then to now, we have not been able to reach many of our members or a majority of them. But for those who have been able to give input, there are mixed feelings, if you will. We have some teachers who are saying that they are grateful, first of all, that they are able to still get paid. Some are saying that the time that they've been at home and the costs that they've had to bear for this period, that they were really looking forward to getting their salaries today so that they could be able to, go ahead and purchase more supplies for the home since we are still locked in. Others are fully understanding of the situation and have no issues with the delay because they are aware that it's a delay, but they will be paid next week. So they are grateful to know that they will be paid. So some mixed feelings and mixed comments in terms of reactions to that memo that was sent out.
In a meeting with Financial Secretary Joseph Waite back in March, assurances were given that teachers would be paid at the end of each month, notwithstanding the financial constraints. The fact the government is late with April salaries raises concern that there are challenging times ahead in respect of meeting the wage bill in its entirety. According to Smith, the FinSec had indicated to the union, as well as others at that meeting, that there are no guarantees that government would be able to meet salaries in full going forward.
We note that when we met with the FinSec a few weeks ago with the 3 unions, he had mentioned that teachers and officers would be paid for the month of March. Well, we had been paid for the month of March and we would have been paid for April. But he also mentioned that there was no guarantee because of the situation. And despite the fact that they had mentioned it, I believe the Prime Minister had said it as well, that they would do all in their power to ensure that we are paid, it would seem that with the situation at hand, that might not be able to happen for the rest of the coming months. And so we have to be prepared and we have to expect that maybe at some point they will come to us to say that there will have to be a cut in salary. And we are hoping that that will not be, but at the same time we have to prepare for the worst. So our teachers are aware of that and our council is aware of that. And we are having some discussions with our members right now, getting feedback from them as to their take on that, should that point come.
3 more persons have recovered from COVID-19. This brings the number of persons who have recovered to 5. Unfortunately, 2 Belizeans died from the virus. 11 active cases are recovering at their homes and none is hospitalized. According to the official records, it has been 10 days since Belize has recorded any new COVID-19 case. But in order for the government to declare the all clear, 28 days have to lapse without a single confirmed case. Via a pre-recorded statement today, Prime Minister Barrow updated the nation on the response against COVID-19. PM Barrow says that random sampling continues, and over the weekend, necessary reagents will be obtained to continue with the necessary testing. With the clusters in San Ignacio and Belize City being contained, health officials are not letting down their guard. Prime Minister Dean Barrow today declared that there will be no extension of the additional measures put in place to prevent the spread of the coronavirus.
The mapping and tracing exercises done in San Pedro, San Ignacio, Corozal, and Belize City are just about complete, but random sampling continues. Also, we expect this Saturday out of Miami a resupply of reagents that will enable us to proceed with the full scope of necessary testing. The fact is, though, that we appear for now to have contained the clusters that arose, particularly in San Ignacio and Belize City. This, of course, is no reason to let our guard down. Indeed, the opposite is true, and our healthcare professionals will try to build on their success. We have, since about a month ago, implemented the required measures to enforce social distancing, including constraints on business activity. Most recently, when our fear of coronavirus spread was at its height, we actually enhanced our protective bulwarks. We did this by way of SI number 55 of 2020, which came into effect at midnight on Holy Saturday. In consequence of that SI, there was the imposition of a complete Sunday lockdown. Public transportation was brought to a halt, government offices were closed, and additional private sector businesses were shuttered. Unless extended, those extra barriers were to last until April 25th, 2020, except for the Sunday lockdown. That was to remain until April 30th, the full life of the rest of SI 55. I am now able to declare officially that there will be no extension of the additional special buffers. They will therefore expire at midnight this Saturday.
PM Barrow says that the relaxation of the quarantine measures is because of the containment of the cluster spread of the novel coronavirus. Local public transportation by land, air, and sea will resume for essential workers and essential purposes only, but passengers will be required to wear face masks. According to the Prime Minister, government offices will reopen, and those businesses placed on total shutdown can go back to operating during limited hours. The goal, according to the Prime Minister, is to jumpstart the economy.
As well, the special Sunday quarantine will disappear. I repeat, however, we are not flinging caution to the winds. So after midnight on Saturday, all that will happen is that we will go back to the state of affairs that existed immediately prior to the inclusion of the additional measures in SI 55 of 2020. In other words, we will still be in lockdown mode, though in a manner not quite as draconian as provided for by the additional special measures. And going forward, this is what will happen. The original state of emergency proclamation will itself expire on April 30th, 2020. An extension is clearly needed, but that can only be done by way of a resolution of the National Assembly. There will therefore be a meeting of the House on Monday coming and a meeting of the Senate the following day. Those meetings are for the sole purpose of approving the state of emergency extension, and physical attendance in the chambers will be limited to the bare minimum of members needed to constitute a quorum. Once the extension of the state of emergency is approved by Parliament, a new SI will be drafted for the signature of the Governor General. The National Oversight Committee is currently being advised by the National Task Force, the Economic Czars, and the Health Team as to further relaxations that the new SI could safely permit. The point is that we are looking at the commencement of a phased, calibrated restart of business and economic activity in Belize.
And back to the COVID-19 data. Based on the most recent information shared by the Ministry of Health, to date, 816 persons, which represents only about 0.2% of the population, have been tested. 792 of those tests have returned negative and 46 are under investigation. As we said, 2 of the 18 positive cases ended in death, and of the 16 that are active, 5 have recovered and are at home. Today, News 5 spoke with the Director of Health Services, Dr. Marvin Manzanero, who says that the quarantine period has been extended past 14 to 21 days. He states that even though there is a less number of cases, Belize is still not in the clear.
Out of the 16 active cases that we had, 5 of those have recovered, which means that 5 of them have gotten 2 negative samples when they were swabbed throughout this week.
Sir, what does that mean for the country and for the efforts that have been put in by the Ministry of Health?
Well, this is the normal progression of what we are seeing elsewhere. I don't know that it allows our guard to go down by any means. As is, I think one of the things we need to stress is that none of the patients have really been turning out negative at day 14, which is why we have extended the quarantine period to up to 21 days. So some of these patients, if you recall, our first case was actually the last week of March, on March 23rd. And we are just starting to see patients recover. That's almost a month later. While we anticipate that we'll have recovery of some further cases this weekend, we are going to start what we call a sweep this weekend, because it's been also 2 weeks that we initially swapped contacts of patients, of the last patients, the last cluster then. So we are reaching 2 weeks this weekend. So I think that becomes a critical point. Results will start coming out Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. One is in terms of looking for any more recovered cases, but 2 is also, this is the second swab of the close contact of those clusters, and the time frame is this Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday.
The situation in agriculture, particularly for livestock producers, is dire, as thousands of heads of cattle are grazing in pastures that are quickly drying up amid the drought. The Ministry of Agriculture is working feverishly to address the frustrations of the agro-productive sector regarding a freeze in the informal trade of cattle with neighboring Guatemala. To make matters all the more difficult, News 5 understands that the Chief Executive Officer, Jose Alpuche, has tendered his resignation with 3 months' notice. His resignation comes on the heels of government's decision to close down all informal trade in livestock between Belize and Guatemala via Bullet Tree Falls and Jalacte. The result is that over 80% of 170,000 heads of cattle that were destined for the foreign market will now remain in country, and Belizeans, on average, do not consume that much beef. So what does this mean for farmers? News 5 spoke with Stuart Dick, the chairman of the Blue Creek Cattle Committee, who says that they are incurring expenses that were not budgeted for.
Cattle is a little bit different than chicken and pork because the cattle, they do keep growing. The chicken and pork, they can only grow so and so big. Cattle is similar, but if we have a sufficient pasture, it wouldn't be as big of a problem. Let's say this was happening in a regular year in August or July or September, when they're in the height of rainy season, it wouldn't matter. We would have sufficient grass. We have already this year had to purchase 450 big round bales that are between 800 and 1,000 pounds. We've spent $36,000 just on our farm, just in bales. And that this is only considering one farm. There's one farmer I talked to 2 days ago. He said for him to get through the drought, he would need to purchase about 800 big brown bales that are between 800 to 1,000 pounds just to get his cattle through if we have another drought the way we had last year. With 80% of our cattle being produced here having to go out, we have to find another option. We have to keep lobbying for some help, some way, whether it is Guatemala, whether it is formally, or whether it is Mexico. But with all the country being on lockdown, all of the vets being in isolation, and Baja hardly being in working right now, it's going to be very difficult to follow the procedures that they have in place. To export formally to Guatemala and Mexico, there's a list of 30 points that you have to follow. Things that have to be vaccinated for, 21 days of quarantine, and in a pen all alone, and they have to be checked on by a Baja vet every week, and all of these things. Some of the vaccines that are required for us to export cattle to Mexico, they're not even available in Belize.
The COVID-19 state of emergency, along with the abrupt closure of the unrecognized trading route at Bullet Tree Falls, has left many farmers holding on to livestock that cannot be sold outside of the country. This, notwithstanding a formal trade agreement established between Belize and Mexico, has left the industry hanging in the balance. According to Dick, on several instances, they were reassured that they were inching closer to being able to trade with Mexico, but that goalpost keeps shifting.
As you know, the country has been on lockdown for the last few weeks, and for the last 5-6 weeks, we haven't been able to sell any cattle. This is the driest, hottest part of the year, as everybody is aware, all the smog and the smoke in the air. This is usually the time of the year when the most cattle are being sold, and there's the market being completely cut off really holds us back, because about 80% of the cattle produced in Blue Creek goes out of the country. There's just a big excess. The population of Belize is too small to consume all of the beef that is grown in Belize. So we have to sell it out of the country. And we've been working for years and years and years trying to get a formal market to Mexico, but there's a lot of paperwork and a lot of things involved to get that done. And we need the help of the government and stuff, but it's something that's been quite a challenge. We've been hearing lately that we are right close. We're a few weeks ago, I was told we were 90% ready to sell to Mexico, but we never hear that time has come yet.
Coming up, there is a conch bust by fisheries in the south. The early closure of the conch season and the coronavirus pandemic have also had an impact on fisher folks. While they are still allowed to harvest finfish within the non-curfew hours, many have not been able to go out to sea, so have lost their source of income. The vast southern waters are problematic to patrol. So Hampton Gamboa says of the Fisheries Department. And there are concerns that fishers are being encouraged to supply out-of-season fishery products to individuals from neighboring countries. News 5's Dwayne Moody reports.
Around 1 o'clock on the afternoon of April 17, 3 Dangriga residents were intercepted near Twin Key in the south. The men were traveling in a recently acquired boat, were heading towards Dangriga when the Fisheries Department, with assistance from the Belize Coast Guard, set chase after them. The cargo was tossed overboard, and soon after, the persons were caught.
In the vicinity of the Twin Key area in the Saltwater Key Marine Reserve, there were 3 fisheries officers and 2 Coast Guard officers on that operation when they came across a vessel, and upon trying to search the vessel ended up running away, drove off and threw bags in the sea, and the officer had to pursue. While pursuing, a couple of the officers went overboard to retrieve the product. And the operation, the vessel continued to be chased and was finally intercepted. And during the interception process, there were 3 individuals on board the vessel who threw away the 2 sacks.
When the joint patrol returned to the location, a sack filled with 237 unprocessed conchs were discovered. The men have been charged for possession of out-of-season conch. They were arraigned in the Dangriga Magistrates Court on Monday, and the case was adjourned.
These 3 individuals were then detained and informed of the offense they have committed, and has been since charged with the offense of possession of conchs during the closed season. Total quantity at present amounted to 237 individual conch during the closed season. From the law, it says basically the possession of conchs during the closed season, a maximum fine of $500. That's under the regulations, and an individual can pay up to anything between $20 to $30 per individual. So we do the maths depending on the range the magistrate used.
Hampton Gamboa of the Fisheries Department says that both lobster and conch seasons are closed, with the 2020 harvesting season for lobster set to commence on June 15th. He says that they have been trying to ensure that fisher folks adhere to the laws.
For us, this area in particular in the south has been a little bit problematic because, yes, the fishers are entitled to go out to sea to fish. Primarily, it's only fin fish, but some of these guys use the opportunity to do other illegal activities, so hence the reason why we have to have continual patrols, joint operation with the Coast Guard.
Dwayne Moody for News 5.
Conservation and Compliance Supervisor at the Fisheries Department, Hampton Gamboa, also gave an update on another case which occurred on March 29th. In that incident at sea, also in the Twin Key area, 4 men were detained, their vessel seized and cargo recovered, which contained 132 whole lobsters. As you know, the lobster season doesn't open until June 15th, so the men should not have been harvesting. Boat Captain Derek Gorosica, Paula Coleman, Caliher Blanco, and Leon Joseph were initially charged, but Blanco took the rap and pleaded guilty to the possession of out-of-season lobster. Today, Gamboa informed the media that Blanco was fined $500 for the guilty plea and a penalty of $30 per lobster by the magistrate. In total, Blanco has to pay $4,460.
They were charged for possession during the closed season, which fortunately for us, the magistrate had levied a fine of $500, which is the maximum fine he could charge for the possession, which is a fine, and then a penalty of $30 for each one. So, you know, that did work out very well. In addition to that, the vessel was confiscated, which we have here, which we have in our possession and everything. So that in terms of the court decision was great, and we have been encouraged to ensure that once we make these arrests, we confiscate everything and then let the court rule, and so far the court has been doing a good job in that regard too, to assist us to try to detour these illegal activities.
The government is not discounting the possibility of a second wave of the coronavirus. With a soft reopening of the economy, the preservation of life and health remains a priority. And as such, Prime Minister Dean Barrow stressed the importance to maintain strict adherence to social distancing and personal hygiene. PM Barrow also gave an update on the unemployment relief and food assistance program. According to the Prime Minister, 23,680 Belizeans have received payouts.
The two key citizen support programs, unemployment relief and food assistance, are proceeding apace. I thus record that as of this morning, 33,771 persons had been approved for the jobless benefits, with actual payouts to 23,680 of them. And 8,017 households of 32,871 individuals have received their grocery baskets. This is in addition to the 4,000 households that get pantry under that pre-existing, long-standing initiative. In light of all the advances we are steadily making, I wish to close on a note of confidence. I therefore restate my unshakable conviction that this fight against COVID-19 is one that we can win, one that we will win.
The Public Service Union, the Belize National Teachers Union, and the Association of Public Service Senior Managers are in consultation with government over cost-saving measures to lessen the financial effects of COVID-19. Government has proposed freezing of salary increments for public officers. This includes police officers who fall under essential services and remain working during the state of emergency. Commissioner of Police Chester Williams has appointed 2 officers to represent the department during negotiations, and he believes that no officer should be laid off. In fact, he says he is willing to take a pay cut in order to prevent any layoffs in the department.
The police responsibility is enormous. There is a lot on us. From me, I can speak for myself. I'm not going to speak for the rank and files, and that will be done by Mr. Jones and Ms. Usher when they go to these meetings. But for me, I personally don't have an issue if my allowances were to be cut to save other public officers. I really and truly wouldn't want to see no one losing their jobs. So if it is that it requires that my salary be cut in order to keep other people employed, then I'm all for that.
After the break, wildfires are destroying the Chiquibul and Vaca forests.
With over 1
A group of Harvard students and one from Emory University have joined efforts to provide free tutoring service for 4th and 6th formers while classes remain suspended. The services are being offered free of cost, and the idea is to have the tutoring program run at least until the end of May with 1 or 2 online sessions per week. Leading the initiative is Belizean Angel Navidad, who is currently enrolled as a third-year undergraduate at Harvard University. Navidad says that this is the perfect time to help students continue to learn and be mentally active during the pandemic.
We're doing it because we thought that this would be really helpful right now, and we had the time, so we thought, why not?
And the group will be focusing on math and English, right?
Yeah. Ideally, we want to focus on math and English because we think that those are core parts of high school curriculum. But we could also do some other things. I know some of the tutors like biology. Some of them are doing arts, history, French. So we might be able to do other things, but it really depends on the time and how many students sign up.
And so far, how many students have signed up or contacted the group?
Yeah, so far there's 50 signups right now, but those are only student signups, so we still need to ask them to have their parents consent to their participation. So once their parents consent, then it's like an official sign up where we can start tutoring them.
So you're attracting a specific group of students?
Specifically, we mostly want to focus on 4th formers and 6th formers. So that type of student, I guess. But I mean, essentially, I think the sort of student who would sign up would maybe be someone who needs the help or wants the help. Because of course, this is only supplemental to everything else that they're doing.
Any 4th or 6th former may sign up for the program online at calms.com/learn. We have been reporting on the growing number of fires which have been sparking all over, and there are now regulations to fine persons who start these fires. Tonight we can report that the forests are burning out of control. Friends for Conservation and Development is reporting that huge fires are burning in the Vaca Forest Reserve and Chiquibu Forest. The FCD says that along the western border, at least 3 large fires have been observed. These fires were caused by farmers who are engaged in agricultural farming. Executive Director for FCD Rafael Manzanero did a flyover today and returned with a clear picture of the environmental damage and dramatic pictures of the fire. 286 hotspots have been registered in the Vaca Forest, while in Caracol a total of 89, and in the Chiquibu National Park a total of 125 hotspots since the start of the year.
In the Vaca area, we were informed about the forest fires that started precisely 2 weeks ago. So those fires, apparently the ones inside of the Vaca Forest Reserve, were created by some farmers, or a farmer particularly who had been working inside of the area. The Vaca has sort of a unique situation because it does allow for certain farmers to operate within the limits of the reserve. And so it would appear that one of them was the main individual that started a fire that now has been consuming. When I went there some 2 days ago, over 150 acres probably had already been burnt. This morning when we flew over the area, there are a lot of forest fires in the Vaca. And that's a mixture of individuals involved, however. Some of them are occurring right along the western border. You could see how it basically came from Guatemala into Belizean territory. Then you can see some that are more internal to Belize, which would be more than likely these other fires that I was noting a while ago. And so there's a mix of fires there in the Vaca. I think the Vaca is dramatic in terms of the forest fires. The people have been also doing the slash and burning of the forest. And so you could see a mix of things there, a lot of smoke all around. You can see basically where the forest is burning. And so it's really a very dramatic picture along that landscape, particularly all along the western border, including the Chickasaw.
A new statutory instrument signed on April 20th prohibits the lighting of fires during the state of emergency. Concerns grew after the number of fires recorded across the country soared to 186. This continues to pose serious health and safety issues, especially for Belizeans living in the Cayo district and Belmopan, where thick smoke wafts across the area all day. The Belize Police Department has been tasked in prosecuting persons who set fires, and according to Commissioner Williams, while the department is currently overwhelmed, they have no option but to enforce this new law.
You would know that we are already overwhelmed with the state of emergency and the other crime situation. But as police officers, we have a job to do. By virtue of the regulation, we have been tasked to ensure enforcement. And so what we're doing is we will see how we can work in tandem with forestry department with a view to look at the areas where these fires are. And then establishing who caused the fire is another story, because you'll see that many of the fires we're seeing around are bushfires. And sometimes a simple thing could cause a bushfire. A man goes to the forest and smoke a cigarette, and then when they don't, just drop the butt there, that stays and eventually catch. And I know that bushfires can also be started by, or can also be ignited by the sun spotting on or reflecting on glass. So there are several factors that do cause bushfires. But in instances where we know who are the persons who caused the fire, then we will prosecute them. That's what the law requires us to do.
The state of emergency for feuding Belize city gangs was lifted last Thursday, and over 142 presumed gang members are back on the streets of the old capital. After 30 days of lockdown at the Belize Central Prison, one would assume that there would have been a lesson learned or an appreciation that they're walking on eggshells. While there has been a reduction in gun violence since mid-March, it hasn't stopped a group of young men from making violent threats to each other on social media. Earlier this week, Jalen Bab and Lyndon Parham, both members of rival gangs, were arrested and charged for a number of offenses committed in respect of videos that were posted on Facebook. While Parham and Bab were charged for producing a video recording to promote gang-related activity, an additional charge was levied on Bab for failure to provide a reason for movement outside of a curfew. Along with them were several other teenage minors, a 15 and a 17-year-old, who've also been remanded to the Wagner's youth facilities on similar charges. When we come back, over 100 persons die annually from HIV. Is the government doing enough to save their lives? The death of Ulysses Roca has sparked debate on the treatment of persons with HIV. The statistics show that only half of the persons confirmed as HIV positive have been taking their antiretroviral, even though it is being provided by the government for free. Annually, there are 200 new cases and over 100 HIV-related deaths. Laura Longsworth-Tucker, the chairperson of the National AIDS Commission, told News 5 that since 2008, there have been over $12 million invested in HIV/AIDS. She questions where the country is in taking care and managing persons who have HIV.
The national response to HIV/AIDS has existed formally since 2001, and the Belizean community has benefited from grants from the Global Fund that has gone into educating and putting in systems to take care of our Belizeans who are infected and affected by HIV. Question has to be asked: where are we? Where were we? And what do we do as communities, as families, communities, and organizations? Where are we in terms of taking care of someone like Mr. Roca who needs us to pay attention? I think that we all have to question what we're doing, and we must do better than that. The issue of HIV, the management of HIV, there's a clear structure in Belize. The medication, the antiretrovirals, are provided to those infected with HIV without them paying out-of-pocket payments. It's available in the community. The Ministry of Health, the government of Belize, purchases that medication. What is extremely disturbing, though, is that only half of those persons that we know are infected with HIV in this country, only half of them are actually taking the antiretrovirals. And not all of them are compliant with therapy, and very few of them can say that their viral load has been suppressed. So that infection will continue.
In a telephone interview with the chair of the National AIDS Commission, News 5 got an update on the status of the controversial Equal Opportunities Bill. Public consultations have concluded on the proposed legislation, which, according to the Ministry of Human Development, the NAC, and the Office of the Special Envoy for Women and Children, regulates specific conduct in areas of public life in order to protect individuals belonging to the 19 identified vulnerable groups from violence. Laura Longsworth-Tucker says that with consultations over, the document is being prepared for submission.
Even while the public consultations ended, we continued with smaller group consultations, including insurance, Chamber of Commerce, the clergy, and we got extremely important insights, and even the unions, and we took all those things into consideration. So the consultations have actually ended, and so we are now, once the COVID crisis passes, we are waiting for the right time to really proceed with moving to cabinet with this document to see if this is something that they can, because we have outlined the transparency of the process and the justification for it, we're hoping to move it into the National Assembly. And there, even at that point, you do know that the community will have another opportunity to make presentations again. So it is not completed, but from our point of view, from the National AIDS Commission, we have done every single thing to really demonstrate transparency and wide consultation. So we are getting the document is being prepared for submission.
Across the world, April 23rd is recognized as World Book and Copyright Day. It is used to recognize the literary works of poets, authors, and writers. But in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, scheduled events had to be cancelled. Today, the Belize Book Industry Association did an online session on its Facebook page featuring Belizean authors. While many gave short readings, others spoke about their craft and the importance of promoting the works of Belizeans. Feline Caetano is the president of the BBIA. She questions the reach of platforms across generations and accessibility beyond urban centers.
Like many others around the world, I'm in this moment yet thinking about all the nationwide events or activities originally planned for Intellectual Property Week and Book Week 2020. Annually, since 2009, I have looked forward to 2 or 3 days of lively discussions with Belizean copyright holders, writers, booksellers, publishers, readers, and the media. Throughout the year, stakeholders operate in relative silos until planning starts for this one week in which we come together like co-authors of a thematic anthology. This year, we are questioning the reach of our platforms, our reach across the generations, our reach beyond accessibilities, beyond urban centers, and a reality we took for granted until now. We're questioning the exclusion of the Belizean voice within certain subjects in our schools and in the regional blocks of Central America and the Caribbean. A voice that would empower the next generation of Belizeans who are currently bombarded by foreign content, ensuring that their voice will not have the cadence nor history of previous generations. We must commit to increasing the publishing and promotion of Belizean authored works of fiction and non-fiction. Times like these call for the Belizean voice to transmit traditional knowledge, ideas, and the distinct rhythms of a resilient nation that is at once a melting pot and a place for cultural continuity. While we are unable to come together in person, we hope that you enjoy this sample of Belizean voices.
An alarming drop in blood donors. That's coming up in Healthy Living. It's Medical Laboratory Professionals Week, a time set aside to recognize and show the appreciation for the medical laboratory technologists who are an integral part of the healthcare system. They're always working behind the scenes. Today we checked in with the blood bank in Belize City to hear about the ongoing work that the lab techs are doing to secure Belize's blood supply. The blood bank building by no means was ever a space that was bustling with activity. But as we've shown in previous stories, there's usually a lot more activity than we saw today. The bare, quiet waiting room and vacant chairs in the donation room matched a complete slowdown of activity across the country.
Sometimes we do a minimum of maybe like 10 or 15 when it's come to replacement, right? Our blood drive, well, would have a bigger figure. We do it like on a Saturday. And now we has decreased by maybe 80% of that. We're so down to like just about, we get from 2 to 4 since this whole thing.
An 80% drop in blood donations within the past month. Under normal circumstances, this would be a dire situation for the country. But the lockdown and change in protocols at the hospitals also triggered a drop in demand for blood.
The supply and demand, there is a balance at this moment. As you know, hospitals have been going on through the emergency mode, which means that elective surgeries have been cancelled and other activities have been cancelled. So we saw that in our favor into the blood bank.
Due to this whole situation and the emergency status the country is in right now, we have been decreased practically 100% with gunshot, gun violence, with road traffic accident, and these were the people who mostly used to utilize our blood drive stock.
Even the handful of blood donations they do see per day are already accounted for, as most donors are giving on behalf of someone else. They're known as replacement donors. As for voluntary donors, whose blood is most necessary during emergencies, the blood bank is hoping that the volunteers will continue to donate. Recently, they have not been able to host any blood drives, but if the need arises, they may have to go looking for donors.
So there's a balance at this moment. However, we cannot predict what will be in the future. However, in any event that we might go low on blood bank, we might go out to the different areas where we know that there is no impact when it comes to the pandemic and the virus. That would be the communities in the rural districts, the Mennonite communities that is very far from the cities, that they don't have direct interaction with the community that is more exposed.
In the meantime, they have adjusted their schedule to accommodate donors within the social distancing regulations. No more than 2 donors at a time and no more than 3 in the waiting room. Family members are not allowed to tag along, and donations can be made on an appointment basis only.
If you have a need, you have someone who needs blood, you could contact the blood bank and we could schedule your time for you to come, so you don't have to worry about being exposed to other people. We could deal with you as one-on-one, just you and the technologists. If you don't have time, you cannot make it during the week from Monday to Friday, you could also contact us and we would try to accommodate you on a weekend. If anybody out there, you know you're healthy, you haven't been exposed to anybody with COVID-19, or you consider yourself non-high risk and you're willing to donate, we are here.
And while the blood bank is a part of the Central Medical Lab and the blood donations are screened for many infectious diseases, they are not tested for COVID-19. According to the United States Food and Drugs Administration, respiratory viruses are not known to be transmitted by blood transfusion, and there have been no reported cases of transfusion-transmitted coronavirus.
The testing of the blood is basically the same as before.
No, it doesn't include COVID-19?
No, it doesn't include COVID. You know, we have a very rigorously set of questionnaires, which is, if you're a healthy donor, you will come in, you will donate blood. If you have any signs and symptoms of flu, that is runny nose or throat fever, we will automatically, temporarily defer you from donating blood.
And that's always been the case?
Yeah, and that has always been the case.
Do it with care. Do it because you care to give this blood to somebody. Don't do it because you want to come to the blood bank. You hear the blood bank testing for a series of tests. We don't test for COVID-19 at the blood bank. So we ask people to be conscious, be honest, do things for love, do things to help somebody.
Currently, the demand for blood is from patients with sickle cell anemia, renal failure, pregnant women, and those being treated for cancer. Additional blood donors are always needed, especially those with negative blood types. To make an appointment for a donation, you can call 224-5010. And that's the news. Don't forget that tonight's broadcast is available in both text and streaming video at channel5belize.com. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/News5Live. I'm Marlene Cuellar. Thanks for joining us, and from all of us here at News 5, please remember, wash your hands, keep your social distance, stay home, stay safe. Good night.